Hello and welcome to the 2018 First Global Technical Question and Answer live stream. I'm going to just give it a minute or two to let people get in, and then we'll get started. Hi again. I'm Kath Silversides, and I'm the Engineering Fellow here at First Global doing Team Technical Support. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the people who helped to do technical support. First Global, Rev Robotics, the software team, and of course all of you teams that share resources with each other. I also have a great team working behind the camera today, helping me put on this live stream, and so a big thank you to them as well. We're going to start by going over some general information and resources that all teams should see, and then we're going to go into the question and answer portion of the video. During the Q&A, you can type your questions into the chat box, or you can go ahead and send an email to kath@first.global. We're going to be checking everything, and we may not be able to get to every question today, but please ask your questions anyways. There will be a file posted on the RobotKit page in a few days with written answers to all of the questions asked during the live stream. So you can go ahead and put your questions in, and I'll start talking about some of the general stuff. So just a reminder that today we're doing the technical talk, meaning that we will not be covering game rules. If you want to find out more information about the game rules, I'm going to show you where you can find that on the First Global website. So I'm just going to switch my screen here. So this here is the main First Global page. And on here, you can click here and you can go to the Game Energy Impact. And this is where the game information is found. So we've got the instructional video, as well as the game manual, as well as the field build guides if your team wants to try and build any parts of the field before the actual competition. If you have any questions about the game, you can take a look at the game Q&A page. And on the game Q&A page, there's a lot of questions from teams that have already asked them and they've been answered. If you don't find your question here, you can always submit a new question and we will get it posted as soon as we can. There is a printable version of all of the questions listed here if you would prefer to read it that way. Another reminder that we will not be answering any event questions today. Please direct those to info@first.global. So we're going to also go over a bunch of where you can find different resources. So there's a bunch on the First Global website. So we're going to go again to the same tab. And we go down to RobotKit. And here on the RobotKit page, you can see there's the instructional videos. But if you close that, you can see that there's this manual section. And there's a lot of different manuals for a lot of different topics. We start with some programming resources. We go to some building resources. And then at the bottom here, we've got additional resources that are often very specialized cases. So like we got something about the potentiometer, when to use encoders in blocks programming, different types of specialized cases. Now another place that's really good to find general resources is Rev Robotics. So if you go to the Rev Robotics website, and on their main page, they have the First Global Kit information. And on here, there's some general build guides and instructions. But what I find most useful to do on the Rev Robotics page is to actually search for the component you're interested in. So say we need to learn something about the Smart Servo. What is useful if you start typing in the Smart, and you can see it's already popping up right here. So you can just go to the product page and you can see all the general information and resources. And so there's the description here, but then you can also go across to documentation resources. And you can see here that there is a user manual as well as servo drawings and a CAD file if that's something your team is needing to do. So I'm just going to switch the screen back again and we're going to move on to a new topic. So just so you all know, in First Global, you have the option of 3 different programming platforms. Which one is best for your team depends a lot on your team's background and skill set. All of these platforms use Java-based programming to program the robots. But the three platforms are Blocks, OnBot Java, and Android Studio. Blocks programming is great for people who like a graphical interface or who are new to programming. You can interface with the Blocks programming platform using the Control Hub connected either to the tablet or to a laptop or computer. And it opens on a browser on the device you are using. There's no external setup to using Blocks, and you can find guides on the First Global website on how to use Blocks. OnBot Java is a text-based programming environment accessible through the Control Hub. Similar to Blocks, you can open it on the tablet or on a laptop or computer. I strongly recommend using a computer or laptop for OnBot Java because you will need to type in lines of code. There's no external setup to using OnBot Java, similar to Blocks, but you will need, OnBot Java is a programming text-based Java language. There are guides and examples available on the First Global website for using OnBot Java. Android Studio is an integrated development environment to create Android apps. The compiled code is then downloaded to the Control Hub. There is a GitHub repository that holds the source code for the First Global competition app. Because of the nature of Android Studio, there is more involved setup and user settings that need to be correctly done before teams can even start programming. If your team already has experience with Android Studio, it's fine to use. Otherwise, I highly recommend using OnBot Java if your team wants to do text-based Java programming, or choosing Blocks with the graphical interface. Now, at the event in Mexico City, we're super excited that there's going to be just under 200 teams, which is amazing. But we are a little concerned about teams correctly connecting their own tablet to their own Control Hub. So what we're going to be asking is every team to properly name their Control Hub and tablet based on a convention, and we will be checking during inspections that the network is set up correctly. So I just want to go over where you can find that information. So I'm just going to switch the screens back. So on the First Global website, we're going to go back to that Robot Kit page. And back to manuals. So the information can be found in the First Global Robot Naming Conventions 2018. And the first part of this document is just an instruction, step-by-step instructions on how to name your tablet and Control Hub. And so you can see it goes through step by step. And then in the second half, what we have here is all the countries mostly listed in alphabetical order. If you're a continental team, you're listed down here at the bottom. And so what the code is going to be is a 3-number and 3-letter code followed by either DS for driver station or RC for robot controller. So for Afghanistan, for example, the code is 004, the numeric code, and the alpha code is AFG. So if you were naming the tablet, for example, it would be 004-AFG-DS for the tablet, and then for the Control Hub, it would be 004-AFG-RC for the Control Hub. And this way, when we're all at the event, we'll be able to pick out your team's Control Hub network out of all the other ones listed at the event. So we're just going to switch screens back. So a number of teams have reported problems with the parts sent in the 2018 robot kit. Rev Robotics is responsible for making sure teams were sent correctly working parts. Because we're about 3 weeks out from the event, there isn't time to ship replacement parts to most teams directly. We would like you to send an email to support@revrobotics.com, letting them know what part you need to be replaced, which team you are from, and why the part needs to be replaced. Be sure to bring the broken parts to Mexico City. Rev will have a booth where you can trade in the non-working parts for new parts. Now we're going to move into the question and answers. If you haven't already started posting your questions, you can put them into the comments or email them. Just a reminder that we may not get to all questions today, but we will get back to you after the stream. So I'm just going to see what questions we've got and what we're going to be doing. Okay, I'm going to get some stuff for a demonstration as we're doing this one. So the question is, my OTG hub isn't working. So I'm just going to move down to so we can see what we're talking about here. So this is the OTG hub. You can use it with the tablet. I'm just going to turn the tablet on. So the OTG hub, first of all, you need to make sure that it's set into the OTG setting and not into the charger setting. So make sure your switch, let's see if I can get that to focus a bit. You want to make sure that it's all the way down of the OTG. And then what we also, so the other thing that can happen is that the tablet has a power saving mode. And this can happen if the tablet's been on in sleep mode for too long or if the battery is really low. So make sure that your tablet is prettily full charged beforehand. And then also shut down your tablet. And the way you do that is to hold down the power button until you can see on the screen it says power off, do you want to shut down your Fire? I just turned mine on so I know it's not going to be in the power saving mode, so I'm just going to hit cancel. And then if you go into the, and then in order to connect your two controllers, you need to make sure everything's plugged in correctly. So we've got the tablet over here. We're going to plug in the OTG hub. It just plugs in like that. And you want to make sure that you're using the USB connectors, not the micro charger there. So we're going to plug in the two controllers. And you can see here on the controllers themselves that the light changed, the light turned on. So I'm just going to unplug one of them. And you can see here that the light turned off. And so if the light is on, that means that it's connected. Interesting. So I'm going to unplug and just see what's happening here. There we go. Okay, so we got them turned on again. And then in order to connect it to the app, you need to hit Start A. Make sure that all your connections are nice and firmly connected. Okay, so you can press Start A, and then on your second one you're going to hit Start B. And as you can see, as I did that, we've now got the two controllers connected up here in the corner. If I unplug one of them, we lose it, and then if I plug it back in, you can see that we can connect them again, just using the Start B or the Start A. You can see they're connected again. So just make sure that all your connections are firmly done, and make sure you're pressing the right buttons, and you should have no problem doing that. So I'm just going to move this out of the way, and we'll just get started on the next question. Okay, so someone's asked, can the Rev color sensor be used as an infrared sensor? So the Rev color sensor has a short range infrared distance sensor built in. However, we recommend using the 2-meter distance sensor for more accurate long range distance measurements. So depending on your use for the infrared the sensor that you want to use, it's probably best to use the distance sensor rather than using the infrared. Okay, so we've got another question. Make sure that if you have any questions, you are posting them into the chat box or sending them in via email, and that way we can answer as many questions that you need. So the question that we've got right now is, how do we make an arm hold a position? Is there a brake function? So the answer, we're going to do it in blocks, just because we've got that set up apparently. So there is no brake function in blocks, but you can set up a motor to use an encoder to hold a position. Check the guides and additional resources on using encoder in blocks for more information. So I'm just going to bring that up now on the computer screen. So that's in the additional resources. So that's on the Robot Kit page. I'm just going to go down to the very bottom. And here we got using encoders in blocks. Open that up. Okay, so you can see here we've got the document just loading right now. So you can see here the blocks program for this. And at the beginning of the program, we reset the encoder. This is because when you turn on the robot, that will then be the starting position for the encoder. This way you know where the 0 is, so make sure that when you're setting up your robot, it's in the same location every time, and that way the arm will move to the same position later on every time. So after we've reset the encoder, the program then sets the motor to run to position, and that will make use of the encoder to just go to a position and just stay there until it's been given a new information. And then down here in the running portion of the code, you can see here that we've got code to say if the A button on the gamepad is pressed to move to a target position of 200. The encoder is measured in ticks, and it's not the same as degrees. So please take a look at the encoder guide made by Rev Robotics if you want to understand how that works some more. And then we've also got it to, in this program, button A moves to a position and button B returns to the 0 position. So that's one way to program using encoders, and that would make sure that your arm doesn't fall down during a match. Like, it'll stay in the position until it's been given a new direction. So I'm going to move on to the next question now. I'm going to switch screens back. Okay. Okay, so this next question is another demonstration. So I'm just going to grab stuff for that. So the question is, how do you connect the expansion hub to the control hub? So I'm going to lower the screen and we can talk about that. So here I've got my control hub connected to the mini-bot, and then we've got the expansion hub here. So the big thing to remember with the expansion hub is it needs 2 different wires. It needs a power wire, and it needs the data communication wire. So the data communication wire is the JST PH 3-pin cable, and you can see here that it's plugged in right beside the button on the expansion hub, and it goes into the same location over on the control hub. So we're just going to plug that in. Please plug in all your wires when the hubs are powered down. That way there's no chance of anything miscommunicating. So make sure that you got the power plugged in as well. And then turn on. Now, it's very normal for the control hub takes 90 seconds to turn on. And so we're just going to wait and let this turn on, and I'm going to show you about the, we're just going to leave that where you can see the lights. So we're waiting for the control hub to be green with a single blink, and the expansion hub will start blinking blue when it's ready to use. Interesting fact, the control hub has an address, so that way these two can communicate correctly. And the reason that there's only a single blink, that's the reason there's only a single blue blink. So the light is green and then it blinks blue just once. You can see it here in a second. And that's because the address for the control hub is 1. If you have, and the expansion hub is automatically set to be 2. So you can see that everything's working correctly here. And so we're just going to move this to the side, and we want to confirm that the expansion hub is connected. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a new configuration file. And so we're just going to go into the menu, just try to make sure that you can see it. We're going to the configure robot portion, and we're going to start a new one. And you can see here that the expansion hub portal 1 is listed. That's talking about this device. So we're going to go into that, and you can see now that there are 2 expansion hubs listed. There's the one that is connected inside the control hub, and then there's also the second expansion hub listed here. So that's perfect. That's all set up correctly. And so you can do that. So, because I wasn't making a full config file, I'm going to exit out of that. And we're going to get started with the next question. Okay. So I'm just going to move my screens around. Okay, so we actually have another question about the lights on the control hub. So I'm just going to unplug the expansion hub, and we can talk about it. So it's normal to, ideally your control hub is green with the single blue blink when it's ready to go. But what happens when you change the when you change a configuration file, the light blinks blue for a few minutes. This is completely normal and very regular. The reason it happened right now is because I just exited out of the configuration file. But the other time it can happen is if you hit restart robot. So you can see here it says restarting robot, and then the blue light blinks. This is really normal. It just blinks for about a minute, and then it changes back to the green and blue. The tablet will look like it's lost connection, but it will reconnect automatically if everything's working correctly. Okay. Let's see what other questions we've got. Okay, what can we do if our HD motor is broken? As I said earlier, please email support@revrobotics.com and include Kath at first.global. There will be replacements at the events, but make sure to bring in the broken items. So make sure to bring the broken items with you to Mexico, and that way we can take them in and we can try and confirm what's gone wrong. If you urgently need or want spares, you can order them from revrobotics.com, but this will be at your own team's expense. Okay, so just seeing the questions that are coming in. Okay, so we're going to do another demonstration. A team has asked for some help with their servo programming. So there's many things that could be happening here. The first thing is to make sure that your servo is configured in the configuration file. Otherwise they won't show up in the blocks if you're using it, and they won't, the ON Java won't be able to access it. Also make sure that you've got it connected to be either a position servo or a continuous servo. That just depends on what your application is. So I'm just going to get the we're gonna do another demonstration, but I just need to get some resources set up for that. So, 1 second. Okay. So I'm just going to grab the parts. So if you want to switch between position and continuous based servos, I'm just going to give a little bit of an explanation right now. So out of the bag, servos are always position based. So that's good to know right off the bat. I'm just going to put this hub on so you can see it turning. And you want to make sure that the white wire, the signal wire, is connected to this little S on the servo programmer. And because we want this one to be position based, we're going to turn it to the S one to be before we turn it on. So you can see here it's just blinking to turn on. And so now what you can do is you can make it rotate to different positions. So you can see here that it's testing its full range, going both directions. And you can stop it. Now if you want to switch it to be continuous based, what you do is you switch this to continuous, and then you hit program. Okay, we're going to do that by we're going to turn it off again. Okay, so we've plugged in the wire. We're going to turn this on. We're going to switch this to continuous, and then we're going to hit program. And you can see here it's blinked. And if it's solid, that means that it's been successfully changed to continuous servo. So now, if I press test, you can see it's speeding up and speeding down in both directions. So that means that it's switched to continuous. If you need more help with that, there is both a servo programmer guide for the programming device, as well as a guide for the servos on the Rev Robotics website. Okay. So just a note about Team USA, you had some problems with your op mode. Please send me an email after the event so we can work that out and figure out what's going on with that. That's not something as general, but yes, okay. Next question. Is it possible to give a motor the same amount of torque as Power 1, but with the speed of 0.02, for example? So the answer is yes. You will need to gear down the motor, which will decrease the speed, but then increase the torque. We've got an example of gearing here, a little gearbox. So we're just going to go down. So with the gearing, if you want to decrease the speed, you want to go from a smaller gear to a larger gear. So if you see here, as we're spinning here, this side is moving very fast, and the other side is moving very slowly. But what's happening here is there's a lot more torque and strength in the movement on this side. Now, if I was doing it on this side, you can see how this is the opposite. And so this would be gearing up the motor. And so this would be if you wanted it to move faster, but it wouldn't have as much power. So it's always a trade-off when you want to do gearing and you don't want to just use a 1-to-1 ratio. So we have another question here. This is a more specific question, but we are going to answer it. This is from Team India. First Global, sometimes our control hub flashes pink and white. What could be the reason for this? And so the answer is that the control hub has a resetting the Wi-Fi settings. So in order to solve this, make sure that the button on your control hub is not pressed down. To check this, please press the button a few times to see if there's a clicking noise. I think I can be able to show you an example of that. So we're going to turn the control hub off. And you just want to, once the control hub's off, you just want to press it. And there should be a very slight clicking noise. And it just slightly depresses. Don't know if you can hear it, but it might be worth a try. The Wi-Fi reset happens if the button was pressed either accidentally or intentionally as the power was turned on and held down for 5 seconds after the battery was turned on, and that is what triggers the resetting the Wi-Fi settings. Unfortunately, if your button is stuck, you might be able to take like a paper clip and try and unstick it. If you're still having troubles, please contact support at revrobotics.com and they will get in contact with you and try and give you some more support for that. Okay, so we got another note here. Can we use some colored tape to identify our cables? This is a real question, but I mean, it's about the technical stuff, so we're going to answer it. You're not allowed to use tape to support stuff in it, but you are allowed to do it for cable management. And we do allow electrical tape to be used, and electrical tape comes in all sorts of different colors. So that's how you can work around it in order to get different colors for your wires. The other thing you can do is if you use white tape, you can always use a marker and write on the tape itself what type of wire it is and where it's going. Both of those are good things. I do highly recommend that your team in general should spend some time the week before the event or a couple weeks before the event, once you're happy with your robot's design, doing some wire management. And that can be involved routing the cables around stuff and attach them using the zip ties so that way they're not loose and hanging. Please be very careful about any wires near gears or servos or moving parts. We just don't want to have any wires get cut up by a gear system and mean that your robot breaks during competition. So do spend some time and do some wire management. Okay. So we got some questions about the game field. Who will be on the game field besides the drivers of both alliances? So your team, when you come to the field, you will have the drivers. There can be a coach as well. The coach can be a student. I think this is where you need to look at the game rules. I think it has to be a student. Your team is also able to bring a human player to the field, and the human player can be in either the village power station or in the what's the name of that? The solar panel factory. That's it. There's so many different terms to remember here. Surrounding the field, though, for support of like if something goes wrong during a match, there will be the control system support volunteers, and if you're having trouble and you're not able to get it fixed, wave your hand, let them know that you're having trouble. They will come help you and hopefully be able to solve the problem very quickly during the match. If not, they'll be able to direct you towards people who will help you after the match to try and solve your problem. And if you need replacements or spare wires, we'll be able to try and help with that. So just a reminder to keep sending in your questions if you've got them. And we can try and answer them. Okay, so we got another question that came in. How to program the smart servo to move 360 degrees or one full rotation. I'm actually just going to switch screens and I'll show you where to find that. Okay, so on the Rev Robotics website, on the Smart Servo page, what's going to be best is that you're going to need to program the servo to be in continuous rotation mode. And then you're going to need to follow instructions in the Smart Servo Robot user manual. So this is the user manual. And you can see here there's operation modes, the default, the continuous, the angular mode. So in the continuous mode, you can see that there's information here about how to program that. And if you're having trouble, please look at the Blocks and OnBot Java user guides on the first global page. They both have information about programming servos as well. And if you're really stuck, you can always email me and we can go over your code specifically to see if something's going on. Just waiting for more questions to come in. Okay, so we've got another question coming in. It is about wiring. Can we use a plastic winding pipe to make sure that our cables are in the right place? No. There is nothing that I think counts as plastic winding pipe that was included in the first robot kit. Your team can only use parts sent in the first global kit. So there is some tubing, there are some strings. You could try wrapping wires together, or like creating a bundle of wires together and then wrapping it if that's needed. But I really would recommend using the zip ties for that. Gather a bunch of wires, zip them together, and then find a place to zap strap them to. I've got another example. My mini bot, I did a little bit of wire management. It's not perfect, but I can show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to move down the screen and we can talk about that. So as you can see here, we've got the 2 core hex motors on the mini bot. And so what I've done is I've pulled them out and I've let them have a little bit of a loop. You don't want to turn the wires too sharply, so make sure that there's a little bit of space for them. And then for me, what I decided, I wanted to route them up the bottom of my robot. So what I've done is I've zap strapped them right here at the very back, right down to the battery base plate. And then I've routed the wires along the bottom here. Notice how they're well under the moving axles. That way they don't get stuck in them. I've got them zap strapped here. And then because of the way the wires were tensioned, there wasn't a need to zap strap them down here. But if you were really worried about it, you could also zap strap them maybe to the extrusion here to make them in a nice steady position. And then on the top here, I've just routed them over top and done it this way. You might have also noticed that I've twisted, very loosely twisted, the encoder wire and the motor wire together. This was so that way when I was routing the wires underneath, I could keep track of which sets of wires were going to which motors. You can also, instead of twist them together, you can also just use more of the zip ties or zap straps to do that. So just a reminder to keep sending in your questions if you've got any. Okay, so we've got a question about chain and sprockets. There are two, so the question is, the chain is slipping on my sprockets. How do I fix that? There are two main ways to prevent this. First of all, make sure that the sprockets each have 180 degrees of chain wrap. And this is so that way there's a lot of firm connection between the chain and the sprocket. And second is to make sure the chain is properly tensioned. So I've got an example of chain here. So when we talked about the 180 degrees of chain wrap, what we meant is that the chain connects with a significant portion of the sprocket. So you can see here that half of the sprocket is connected to the chain, and that's really well done. And then you also want the tension to be good. So in this case, the tension's pretty good. There's still some give in it. That's normal. It's normal to have give in the chain. And the best way to change the tensioning in the rev extrusion setup is actually to change the position of this this bracket here. So just unscrew this. You can pull it out or push it in just a little bit. Try and get the tension correct. If you're still having trouble with the sprockets, you can go to the Rev Robotics website. There is a sprocket guide there, and I'll just show you where you can find that. So we're on the main robotics page. We're going to go to the first global kit information, and you can see here that there's the sprocket and chain guide. And so you can, so it just has some information about the terminology used in sprockets, how to connect the chain together, different ways of doing that, and then information about which direction the chain will work. And then here, this is the one where we talked about how much chain needs to be in contact with the sprocket for it to be effective in transferring power. This also goes into gearing as well. It's not just about sprockets, this guide. So there's where you can find that. Okay. So we got a question here. Do we really need to use blocks programming? Team Guatemala is using Android Studio. As I said earlier, teams can choose which programming language to use, if it's blocks, OMBOT Java, or Android Studio. If you are already familiar with Android Studio, continue to use it. There's no problem in that. We're just encouraging teams that are new to First Global to look at OMBOT Java as another option for text-based programming, and for blocks programming for teams that are really new to using computers and using and the robotics field. And this is just so that teams can be successful in whatever way they are in whatever they're doing. We just want to give teams the resources at an information level that they can grasp. Okay. So we've got another question here. Okay, so we got more questions about the programming the servos. I think we wanted to. I think we decided that it was better to show some steps in the programming. So I'm just gonna get that set up from the RobotKit page, and we're gonna talk about that. So under manuals on the RobotKit page, in the blocks programming guide, and we're said that page 12 is where the servos are. Okay. Okay, controlling a servo motor. So first you need to make sure that your configuration is correctly set up and the servo's on the correct port. If you're wanting, you can map a servo directly to a joystick. That is one option. And this will be really useful if your team is in continuous rotation mode. But it won't be as useful if your team wants to do position-based programming. So there's some information here about joystick ranges and stuff, but then in here you can, just seeing what this is. So this is actually using the joystick range to control a target position. So what they've done is they've created a variable named target position, and they've set the target position to take the input from the joystick, the negative of the joystick, so that way when the driver pushes forward on the joystick, it'll read as a positive value. And then they set the servo motor to the target power. So take a read through this guide and take a look at the information given here. And if you need more information, you can contact me and I can send you examples of what can be done. Okay, so now we're just going to switch back. It's because we've had some more questions. Okay, so there was another question about chain. How should we break the chain if the chain breakers in the kit is broken? So please email support@revrobotics.com. They will give you some instructions on the best way to manage your chain if you broke your chain breaker. You might also be able to find a chain breaker at your local hardware store. The chain breaker is a number 25 chain, which is pretty standard in bicycles and other items, but just make sure that it is a number 25 chain breaker, that it can do that. There's another question, should we share code with all teams? Yes, we do encourage you to share the code if you want to. This way other teams can learn from what you're doing and how you're programming, so that way we can let everyone get the best robot that they can build. We encourage teams to share information and share resources, and it's in the spirit of gracious professionalism, where we want everyone to win and learn and have a good experience. So if you are willing to share code, please do that. I know that some teams have created some different platforms to share information on. There is, of course, the First Global Community page on Facebook. There is the Discord chat that is happening, and there's also WhatsApp conversation that I've seen happening as well. If you want information on any of those, you can email me at kath@firstglobal or first.global, or check out the Facebook page, as a number of those have been listed onto them. So we have another question coming in, so I'm just going to let that come in and then we can talk about it. Okay, so we got another broken motors question. The HD motor ratio 20:1 has failed. So far, we are using the core hex motors from the 2018 kit. So you can use either the HD hex motor or the core motor. Both work in varying situations. Some situations are better for the core motor and some situations are better for the HD motor. Can we use one of the core hex motors? So the question continued. Can we use one of the core hex motors from the 2017 kit to replace the failed motors? So just a reminder that because of the way the rules are in this, you can only use 4 core hex motors and 4 HD motors. So if your HD motors have failed and you do need access to more motors, please email support@revrobotics.com and kath@first.global and talk to us about the best way to proceed in getting replacement motors for that. Okay, just an update on the bicycle, the chain. Earlier, when we were discussing the chain breaker, I accidentally said that bicycle chain is number 25. Apparently that's incorrect. It is, make sure the chain breaker that you get can handle a number 25 chain. So we're just going to see if there's any more questions here. Okay, so the question that just came in is the chain on our robot has started rusting. Should we do anything about this? Most of the time, rust on the surface of the chain doesn't impact performance. There will be extra chain at the event in Mexico City if you need to replace your chain because it's impacting performance. Just seeing if there's more questions coming in. So we do have a few more minutes left. You are welcome to continue asking questions, but if there isn't any questions coming in, we might end the stream a few minutes early and let everyone get back to their busy day. Just waiting for a question to come in. So the question that just came in is, can the robot exceed 1 to 2 centimeters? Just taking a look to see what, okay, how is the robot going to be sized? So just a reminder that the robots can be up to 50 centimeters, 50, in size. It doesn't matter how small your robot is, as long as it's within the 50 centimeters. It will be, during inspection, they're going to have a measurement device that measures the 50 centimeters, and they're going to kind of place it around your robot to make sure that it is the correct size. Now, the space is a cubic volume, so it's 50 centimeters in height, 50 centimeters in width, and 50 centimeters in depth. So make sure that you're within the cube of the volume, like the volume of cube, so that way it's there. Just waiting for another question to come in. So there is an orange, the question is the orange rope thread Kevlar reinforced? How much stress can it tolerate? So there is a rope sent in the first global kit. It's orange, but so the rope is UHMWPE. That's the material. It's ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, and it's rated for about 40 kilograms of breaking strength. So don't think it's Kevlar, but don't assume the rope isn't Kevlar, but you can put a significant amount of stress onto that rope if that helps your team's design. So there's a question coming in that will have to be directed at the referees at the event. Are there any penalties for scratching or lightly damaging the cubes to the, such as damage to the exterior of the cubes? So I'm just going to grab a cube. So the cubes are made out of cardboard. They're pretty well sized. There will be allowances for normal wear and tear, but the short answer is that the referees are going to have to tell the team, like, let you know what is considered lightly scratching or damaging, because that is really based on the situation, unfortunately. You will not get penalized for normal wear and tear, whatever the referees end up deciding that to be. Good question. Okay, so another question just came in. Oh, just a follow-up to the damage on the cubes. If there is serious and repetitive damage to cubes, that will be penalized. So if your robot always ends up putting a scratch on the cubes, that will be penalized, even if it is relatively light. We want the normal wear and tear to be incidental and non-consequential. But again, the referees will be making those decisions, and please look at the question and answers as well as the game Q&A for details on that. So I'm going to finish up with one more question here, which is a very important question. Is there a reference document for the inspection protocols? So at the moment, there is no documentation for teams on what the inspection is going to look like. We will create something so that your teams have an idea of what's going to happen. We have set up an inspection checklist for the hardware and software inspectors, but we will get that to you in the next week or two. And that way you can know what's going to happen for inspection. So that's going to be all of our questions today. Reminder that if we haven't answered your question already, we will be posting a document on the First Global website. We're going to post it on the Robot Kit page under additional resources with the answers to all the questions that we didn't get to today. And please check the game Q&A if you had questions related to the game, because some of them might be answered there. I am excited. I have been excited to see all of the teams progressing with their robots. It's exciting to see the videos that you're sending in, showing what your robot's doing and how you're practicing. And I'm so excited for Mexico City, and I hope you all have an exciting next month in prepping, and I hope you all have fun prepping for the event. So see you in Mexico City, and thank you for asking your questions on the live stream. See you.